Well, hello there. Ready to ditch the headlines and truly understand what makes the global economy tick? Because today, we're taking a deep dive into something, well, absolutely fundamental, international business operations. We've gathered some really compelling insights here, got a stack of articles, research, expert notes, all designed to give you a clearer picture. Why companies venture beyond their home borders, how they actually manage to do it, and the complex landscape they navigate along the way. Our mission, like always, is to give you that vital shortcut to being genuinely well-informed, hopefully with those aha moments you love.
That's right. And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is understanding not just the sort of nuts and bolts of global business, but why it's so critical for companies to think beyond their home turf. It's about more than just expanding, really. It's crucial for success, for resilience, and for managing risk in our incredibly interconnected world. We're here to help you see that bigger picture behind the global flow of goods, services, capital, and how it impacts all of us, actually.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The big question is, why do companies even bother with the immense complexity of international business? You'd think staying local would be easier, right? But our sources, they make it clear it's all about maximizing value. How exactly does crossing borders help them do that?
Well, it often comes down to some fundamental economic principles, the first big one being comparative advantage. The core idea is specialization. Just like you or I might specialize in one skill, countries and companies find significant advantages by focusing intensely on what they do best
Yeah.
and then, trading for everything else. It lets them maximize their efforts and resources globally.
Okay. And here's where it gets really interesting based on our notes.
Hmm.
Think about the island nation of Bermuda. They don't produce gasoline or vehicles, right? Yet their roads are packed with cars. How? Well, they've specialized brilliantly in tourism. They use the revenue from visitors to import everything else they need. That's just a perfect real-world example of comparative advantage in action. It shows prosperity isn't just about self-sufficiency. It's about smartly leveraging unique strengths on a global scale. Kind of flips the script, doesn't it?
Exactly. It really shows how interdependence can drive efficiency. A fantastic example.
But comparative advantage isn't the only driver, is it? Sometimes it's simply about getting what you need, period. Our sources talk about imperfect markets. What does that actually mean for a company looking to expand?
It means resource markets aren't always free-flowing or equally accessible everywhere. You see this with the physical immobility of resources. Like, you can't just pick up an oil field and move it, right?
Yeah.
Or you have regulatory barriers that limit trade. So to access crucial resources or specific components, companies have to look beyond their own borders because local markets are, well, imperfect and sometimes just plain insufficient.
Right, insufficient. And we have a great example that illustrates this perfectly. High-Tech Components, Inc. They need these special electronic parts to build their state-of-the-art antenna systems. Now, they source about half domestically, which is fine. But historically, they've bought like 35% from Asia and 15% from Europe. Recently, though, they've faced huge price increases. Why? Production shortages, higher shipping costs, even political tensions with some of those exporting countries. So what does this all mean for them? Well, they're actively seeking other international trading partners now to mitigate this risk. It's a clear case of needing to go global, not just for an edge, but because local markets simply can't supply everything reliably or affordably anymore. It's becoming a necessity.
Exactly. And that search for reliability for new markets, it ties directly into the final motivation we'll cover here, the product cycle theory. This theory predicts a kind of natural progression for a product from its birth to maturity and how that influences a company's international moves.
Like a journey for the product itself, isn't it? It starts at home, then maybe moves abroad.
Precisely. It usually starts with domestic success, but that inevitably invites domestic competition. So, to keep growing and to efficiently use their production capacity, companies then start exporting. Makes sense. But then, foreign success, in turn, also promotes foreign competition. You get local players jumping in. And this dynamic motivates the original entity to actually establish a business outside its boundaries, maybe even setting up production abroad, to differentiate itself and compete more effectively with those new foreign rivals. It's this continuous cycle: innovate, expand, adapt.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've covered the crucial why, from strategic specialization like Bermuda to necessity like high-tech, and market evolution with the product cycle. Now, let's pivot to the how. Once a company decides, okay, we're going global, what are the practical methods they can actually use? Our sources lay them out pretty clearly.
Yeah, this is where we get into the practicalities, the nuts and bolts of multinational operations. And there's definitely a spectrum of involvement. The most straightforward is just international trade. simple exporting and importing of products or services. It's kind of a low-commitment way to test foreign
The
waters.
toe in the water approach.
Exactly. Beyond that, we get into more involved methods. Next up is licensing. This is where an entity grants another the right to use its intellectual property, things like processes, technologies, patents, maybe trademarks in exchange for a fee.
Right. So like if Wireless Inc., a U.S. company, wanted to set up cellular phone systems in Mexico,
Mm.
they could just license their tech to a Mexican firm for a fee instead of building everything themselves from scratch.
Precisely. Avoids a lot of upfront investment and complexity. Then there's franchising, which is really a specific type of licensing. Here, a franchisor provides a whole business model, their marketing, delivery strategy, training, resources, the brand, to a franchisee, again, for a fee.
Okay, that makes me think of, say, Flip a Burger Inc., a U.S. corporation. They could give their training, their unique logos, the whole system to businesses operating in Peru,
Yeah.
letting someone else run the local operations, but keeping those brand standards consistent.
Spot on. Moving further up the commitment ladder, we have joint ventures. These are essentially partnerships. Two or more participants combine their strengths, often from different countries, to market or deliver a product. It's about pooling resources and expertise.
We saw a great example in the sources, Engulf and Devour Food Products, a U.S. company, teaming up with Chez Brûle, a French concern. They could work together to distribute U.S. candies throughout France using Chez Brûle's existing distribution network and their local market knowledge. It's about combining forces where each partner brings something valuable to the table.
Absolutely. Synergy is the goal there. Then we get to direct foreign investment, or DFI. This is a much more direct, much more significant approach. An entity establishes international operations by either, one, purchasing an existing foreign company as a subsidiary, or two, by starting a brand new subsidiary from the ground up within a foreign country. It's a full-on commitment, big investment.
Right, putting down real roots.
Exactly. And finally, there's global sourcing. This is maybe the most complex. It's about orchestrating all levels of product manufacturing, from R&D to production to marketing on a truly international basis. It's a holistic strategy. And it often integrates elements of the other methods we just talked about, like import-export, licensing, maybe joint ventures to optimize the entire global value chain. You often see this with the really big multinational corporations.
Okay, that really clarifies the different house. But, understanding how to do business internationally is one thing. Actually doing it means dealing with a complex and, frankly, often unpredictable landscape. What critical factors do companies really need to assess before they take that leap? What should be on their checklist?
There are quite a few layers of influence they need to consider. First, and maybe most immediately visible, are political and legal influences. Each foreign country presents significant political risks and specific legal requirements. This ranges from the stability of the government to detailed regulations that impact business.
And within that political sphere, there's the really serious concern of asset expropriation, right? The risk that a foreign government could potentially just seize assets from foreign companies. Assessing that risk of political intervention has got to be crucial.
It is, absolutely, a major red flag if the risk is high. Beyond that, governments also use taxes and tariffs strategically to control economic activity. Companies often try to, mitigate these risks by using something called transfer pricing.
Transfer pricing. How does that work exactly?
Well, in essence, it's how different internal divisions within a single multinational company charge each other for goods or services when those cross borders. It's a strategic tool, really, for managing their global tax liabilities. Can be quite complex and sometimes controversial.
I see. Okay.
And beyond the direct money aspects of taxes and tariffs, governments can also impose limitations on asset ownership or joint venture participation. Some countries might restrict foreign ownership percentages, say you can only own 49%, or they might even outright prohibit certain types of ventures in specific sectors. And that often extends to content or value-added limits, sometimes called sourcing requirements.
Sourcing requirements.
Yeah, where governments might offer, say, tariff reductions if imports include specific percentages of local material and labor. It's a way to encourage local production. It's this complex web of incentives and restrictions you have to navigate.
So it's not just about the money, it's also about control. The legal and structural control a company might or might not have. And speaking of incentives, we also see things like foreign trade zones coming into play.
Precisely. These are special geographic areas, often near ports or airports, where tariffs on imported goods are waived until those goods leave the zone and actually enter the host country's commerce. This can greatly impact import controls, logistics planning, and even where companies decide to locate their facilities.
Makes sense.
Now, beyond regulations, the fundamental economic system of a country matters hugely.
Right. So we're talking about really stark differences here, like centrally planned economies, think China, historically anyway, where the government largely owns the factors of production and directs economic activity, versus market economies like the U.S. or Japan, where individuals and private businesses largely own and control those factors. Big difference in how you operate.
Huge difference. And then you have hybrid models or specific structures like conglomerates. Think about the Japanese keiretsu or the Korean chaebol. These are well, self-sustaining, deeply integrated organizations that combine financing, manufacturing, supply, often all under one huge umbrella. A structure like that would likely run into antitrust issues in the U.S., but they're foundational in other major economies. Understanding these differences is key to figuring out the competitive landscape.
Absolutely. And of course, the elephant in the room whenever we talk about international business, culture. This is a massive one, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely massive. Shared values, attitudes, norms of a group, they profoundly impact how business is done, often in ways you don't expect until you're there.
Our sources break down culture into some fascinating dimensions that offer a kind of framework for understanding these differences. For instance, individualism versus collectivism. The U.S. generally high on individualism, valuing personal achievement, whereas many Asian cultures are far more collective, emphasizing group harmony, loyalty to the company or team.
Right. And that difference plays out in everything from compensation to teamwork. Then there's uncertainty avoidance. This measures how comfortable a culture is with ambiguity, with risk, with the unknown. The U.S. is relatively guarded, but sometimes innovative with uncertainty, maybe moderately tolerant. But many Asian and South American cultures might be highly averse to it, preferring clear rules, procedures, stability.
Yeah, I can see how that would affect everything. Decision-making speed, how you write contracts. And then there's short-term versus long-term orientation. The U.S. often has that short-term focus, quarterly results, while many Asian cultures have a much longer-term perspective, planning years, even decades ahead.
A very significant difference in strategic planning. And finally, acceptance of leadership hierarchy or power distance. The U.S. has a somewhat balanced view, maybe less formal, but countries with histories of European monarchies might be more accepting of large power differences. While, interestingly, some former colonial counterparts in Asia and South America might be more distrustful of concentrated hierarchical power, maybe due to historical reasons.
Wow. Understanding these cultural dimensions isn't just like academic. It profoundly impacts everything, doesn't it? How you structure a team, how you give feedback, how you negotiate a deal, even how you market a product. It really shows why a truly global mindset means understanding these often invisible drivers of behavior.
Couldn't agree more. And tying into all of this, kind of underpinning it, we have technology and infrastructure. The differences here can be just immense. You have to factor in variations in communications networks. Is the internet reliable? Fast? What about transportation systems? Roads, rail, ports? The reliability of basic things like power and water? The general level of staff training and education? Even standard accounting practices can vary significantly. These aren't just minor details. They can be absolute make-or-break factors for setting up and running operations smoothly.
That's a huge list of considerations, a real minefield, potentially. And as we kind of conclude our deep dive into international business, we really can't ignore the unavoidable flip side, the risks. Because while the rewards can be great, so too, clearly, can the challenges and the dangers.
That's right. The risks associated with international business are generally categorized, and companies spend a lot of time and resources analyzing and trying to mitigate them. A really big one is exchange rate fluctuation or currency risk. And this isn't just one single risk. It's typically divided into three key categories.
Okay, let's break those down because currency seems to touch everything here.
Okay, first, there's transaction risk. This is the direct exposure of a company's cash flows from specific international deals to currency movements. So, for instance, if you're owed money in euros and the euro weakens against the dollar before you get paid, you receive fewer dollars. Pretty straightforward impact on a transaction.
Okay, got it. The immediate deal risk.
Second, there's economic risk. This is broader, more long-term. It's the impact of currency changes on a company's overall market value and its competitive position. It's about how exchange rates affect your pricing strategy, your input costs, your sales volumes over the long haul compared to competitors. Much more strategic.
Right, the bigger picture effect.
And finally, translation risk. This is more of an accounting issue, but still important. It affects how a company's foreign assets and liabilities are reported on its consolidated financial statements back home. When you translate those foreign currency financial statements into your home currency, the reported values can change simply due to exchange rate movements, impacting your balance sheet figures.
That's how the books look, essentially.
Exactly. So, three distinct types of currency risk there. Then there's the risk associated with foreign economies themselves. Operating in another country means your performance is inherently tied to their economic health. Your domestic economy might be booming, but if your key foreign market is in a recession, that's going to directly drag down your multinational company's overall performance.
And this includes several specific areas, doesn't it? Based on our notes, things like foreign demand. Like if demand weakens in that foreign country, their government might react, maybe slap on new tariffs, or even require local production instead of imports to protect jobs.
Yes, precisely. Governments often react to protect their own economies, and then there are interest rates. Generally, higher rates in a foreign country usually mean slower economic growth and reduced consumer demand there. Lower rates might suggest increased growth and opportunity.
And inflation, too, right? Higher local inflation erodes purchasing power, making imports more expensive for local consumers, while lower inflation might increase their ability to buy imported goods.
Absolutely. And of course, the direct impact of exchange rates on demand, which we touched on with currency risk. A weak local currency makes imported goods more expensive, reducing demand for them, while a strong local currency makes imports cheaper and can potentially boost demand. It all interconnects.
It really does. Okay, so currency risk, foreign economic risk. It's the last major category.
Lastly, and it's a big one, we have political risk. These are essentially non-economic events or environmental conditions that can significantly disrupt financial operations and cash flows. When we talk about asset expropriation, it sounds very dramatic, maybe something out of a movie. But for companies investing millions or billions abroad, it's a very real, tangible risk they have to assess and sometimes even insure against.
Right. Beyond that extreme, though, beyond actual seizure of assets, what else falls under this broad umbrella of political risk? Because it sounds like it could be quite wide-ranging.
Oh, it is. A whole host of things, unfortunately. You've got everything from burdensome bureaucracies and systemic inefficiencies that just make doing business slow and costly, to outright corruption within government or business circles. The host government's general attitude towards foreign firms, are they welcomed, merely tolerated, or actively discouraged? Even local consumers' attitudes towards foreign firms can be a factor. Nationalism can play a role.
Hadn't thought about consumer attitudes as political risk.
Definitely. Plus, more tangible issues like the inconvertibility of foreign currency. That means a local currency can't be freely exchanged for other major currencies, like dollars or euros, which makes it incredibly hard, sometimes impossible, for companies to get their profits out of the country. Trapped cash.
Oof, it's a bad situation.
And, of course, the ultimate political disruptor. War, civil unrest, major instability, all of these can drastically impact a company's ability to operate safely, successfully, and profitably.
Wow. Okay, we have really covered a lot of ground today, seriously. From the core motivations for going global comparative advantage, imperfect markets, the product cycle, to the various ways companies actually do it straight: licensing, franchising, JVs, DFI, global sourcing. And then all those nuanced factors to consider: political, legal, economic systems, culture, infrastructure. And finally, the significant risks they have to navigate: currency, foreign economies, and political risks. It's a truly complex ecosystem.
It really is. And our hope really is that you listening now have a much clearer, more detailed understanding of the forces that shape global commerce. It's about seeing the threads, how a company's strategy connects to political tensions halfway across the world, or deep-seated cultural norms, or shifting economic realities. Critical thinking about these interconnected factors is just essential, I think, to understanding today's business landscape and maybe even global events more broadly.
Absolutely. So thinking about everything we've discussed today, all the motivations, the methods, the challenges, the cultural differences, the political risks, the currency fluctuations, what does this all mean for you? Here's a final thought to chew on. What do you think is the single most unexpected factor? Maybe something subtle, something we touched on that you hadn't considered before that could truly make or break a company's international venture. Something that might fly under the radar but have huge consequences.